All right. Well, hi all, and welcome to From 3 Months to 3 Weeks, How Zuora Smashed Integration Constraints. Today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Tray.ai and produced by Actual Tech Media, a future B2B company. My name is Jess Steinbuck. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I am so happy that I get to be your moderator for this webinar because today we are going to listen in on a conversation between two incredible thought leaders and experts who are going to walk us through a real world example. So together we can collect learnings, we're going to understand some of the opportunities, we're going to take notes on the victories, and we're going to replicate those victories as we wander through the roadmap of how Zuora transformed their integration processes from slow and heavy to cutting edge and nimble. This is going to be such an interesting conversation full of those real world insights and actionable steps that we all love to get, right? That's always the best part. And as an extra bit of excitement, I do need to call out that since this conversation took place, Tray.ai has gone through its own transformation from Tray.io to Tray.ai. And this change actually took place because AI is the real focus of this organization, right? Of their solutions. They are so dedicated to enabling AI adoption through their integration platform that they have actually added it to their name. How cool is that? So Tray.ai introducing the one and only. So very excited to dive into that. I cannot wait to get into this conversation. We have a few housekeeping points that we want to get through that are going to help you get the most out of your time here with us today. So let's zip through those and we'll get this show on the road. I want to start out with the questions window. And we always start our tours here because obviously the best and most important part of our webinars is getting interactive, getting engaged, getting involved, and asking questions of our expert presenters. And Michael, who's one of our incredible experts, is here with us today on live chat along with the Tray.ai team. So they'll be answering questions as we go through our conversation. So they want to hear from you on live chat. Keep those questions coming in. Any of your thoughts, your ideas, your general wonderments, whatever it is rolling around in your brain. And we know with these types of real world examples, there's going to be a lot of questions. So make sure you are getting those in and we will get answers to you over live chat. In fact, you can give a little test run right now. Make sure that you're alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic, ready to rock. So get those questions in, get those highs and hellos in. I see you, Rakesh. Hey, Gilbert. Hey, Chris. We've got Andre. We've got Deb. We've got a whole awesome crew here with us. Hey, Jorge. Hey, Ed. Hey, Posh. Keep those highs and hellos rolling in. Let me know how you're doing today, how your day is starting out. And as we go through, make sure you're getting those questions in. Now, that window is also going to be the best place to let us know if you do have any technical issues. I'm hoping this doesn't come up. Let's plan on nice, smooth sailing. But we all know that occasionally gremlins get in our system. So here's step one. If a gremlin gets into your system, try a browser refresh. I promise that will clear most of them out. If that is not working for you, if the browser refresh has not solved any problems with audios or slide or anything like that, then you're going to post a message there in that questions window and our team will be there to help you out. We're with you throughout. So any questions, you can post them right there in that chat. We've got a Guten Tag from Missouri. Hey, Brandon, I like it. Guten Tag on back. Halli to you. All right, so, and thank you for keeping the highs and hellos coming. The next stop, if you've been playing around on the questions tab, which I love, head one tab over and go to the handouts tab. Make sure you click on those resources. We've got some incredible resources and takeaways for you from the Tray.ai team. These are going to be great follow-ups to the conversation that we're hearing today. And I promise you, you're going to take in a lot of information. There's going to be a lot coming at you very quickly, and you're going to want to dig back through it all, right? You're going to want to recall some of that. And those handouts are a great way to bring all of that information back up in your brain. So make sure you've got those handouts open. Hold on to those. Don't go too far away from us yet because we've got a lot of good stuff coming at you. But make sure you've got those handouts and resources for you after we wrap the webinar. All right, so we did questions, we did handouts. One last thing to talk about, and that is, of course, our prize giveaway. We have a $250 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Now, you do need to be here in live attendance at the webinar in order to qualify to win that Amazon gift card, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you are not sure what those T's and C's are, no problem. We have them listed for you back in that handy dandy handouts tab. So head on over there and you will find the full terms and conditions waiting for you. All right, well, that was it for all of the housekeeping. We zipped through that pretty quickly because I am very excited to get into our conversation. I know that you are as well. We've got our team here ready to rock on live chat, so let's get things rolling. I am very, very happy to introduce you all to our two incredible experts here with us today, and that is, of course, Michael Douglas, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Tray.ai, and their featured guest, Mark Gill, Senior Director of IT at Zuora. All right, well, Michael and Mark, I know there's a lot of great stuff coming at us. I am very excited to get into our conversation here today. I know you all are as well. So let's get things rolling.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. Thank you so much for being able to join our webinar today. From 3 weeks to 3 months, how Zuora smashed its integration constraints. My name is Michael Douglas. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Tray. And I'm joined by Mark Gill, a Senior IT Director at Zuora. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Great. How are you doing today? Thanks for having me.
Doing great. Thank you so much for being able to join us today. And thank you for everybody out there for giving us the time out of your day to join this webinar. But I think it's going to be well worth your while. And we've got a really great story for you. So as I said, my name is Michael Douglas. I'm with Tray. In case you don't know anything about Tray, we are an integration automation platform, and we're built on our universal automation cloud. And basically that means we allow organizations to automate their business processes and workflows, as well as allowing them to integrate their disconnected and disparate systems, right? So we give a lot of scalability and securability to enterprises when they need to do this. And Tray really takes a modern approach to iPaaS. So iPaaS, Integration Platform as a Service, which when we say a modern approach, each core experience is really designed to meet your teams where they are. So unlike a lot of legacy iPaaS out there, which is what we're here to talk about today, we give both a developer and non-developer experience through a code and low code solution. So with that, I'm going to just kind of move through to a bit of background. So with that, Mark, I'd love to get an introduction to yourself, how long you've been at Tray, your experience, and we can move on.
Hi. Yeah, thanks. So hi, everyone. My name is Mark Gill. I've been at Zuora almost 3 years now. I work in IT for Zuora, and I'm responsible for a number of things, integration, security, service management, but also our integration layer within our internal landscape. I have previous experience in very large IT organizations, and so it was refreshing to be a part of Zuora, where the team is smaller, more focused, and we're able to make a bigger difference as we implement these integration solutions. So I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark. So just before we get started, I'd like to run through some of the things that we're going to be talking about today with Zuora's journey. So we're going to be going through first of all, an introduction to Zuora for anybody who's not familiar with Zuora, but I'm sure most of you are. Some of the key challenges that they were facing from an integration and automation perspective, the different approach or the migration that they had taken, the solution that they ended up implementing, which of course is Tray, and some of the results and use cases that they ended up implementing. So we'll take some time to double click down on those. We will have a Q&A section at the very end, but I would encourage anybody who has any questions along the way, please feel free to put them into the chat, and we're happy to address them at the very end. So Mark, I'm not going to bore the audience by trying to read off the slide of Zuora, because it's great just to kind of get it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So I'd love for you to give the audience a bit of a background on Zuora and the kind of the space that you guys play in.
Sure, thanks. Most of you have probably heard the term subscription economy. Subscription economy is something that was created by our founder, Tinzo, who is one of the early Salesforce employees. And it's really delivering a tool set that allows businesses to change how they sell and sell in a subscription kind of way. When you sell that way, it changes how you put pricing together, how you package your solutions, and how you account for that in your financial system. So there are a series of products that we sell, billing, revenue, collect, and some others. And just recently in the last, it's probably been 10 days, we have acquired a small company called Tray.ai, which is really going to move us into the ability to measure and meter consumption and really move to the next generation of subscription economy, which we're calling total monetization. So it's a super exciting space to be in, and we think it's the future.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Congratulations on the acquisition.
Thank you.
So, Mark, as it relates to integration and automation, could you just take me back to when you first joined Zuora and moved into this role, kind of the challenges that you were faced as it relates to, your integration platform and kind of where the team was at back then?
Yeah. When I came in 3 years ago, we had integrations running in many different technical solutions. We had an implementation of MuleSoft. We have AWS Lambda code running all over the place. We had a team that implemented integration concepts in the Apex code in our Salesforce environment. And we had Work Auto running for a couple specific use cases. It was distributed, inconsistently implemented, difficult to support, and you just couldn't keep track of it. And so as we started parsing the environment, we had to come to grips with, what are we going to do with this? MuleSoft was a significant challenge because it was difficult to train people, to bring them up to speed. When you needed a developer to get up to speed on MuleSoft, it took a long time, and it was a significant investment. And our team just isn't big enough to necessitate having 4 or 5 people dedicated to keep that environment running. And so we had to figure out another way. It was also an expensive environment because we had multiple different teams running. And this is a little bit of our own problem that we created for ourselves. We had different implementation styles. We had custom code written in different ways, not consistent. And it was overall just a landscape that was challenging. The biggest point that I would make in our challenge space here is, because of this, people didn't think about our integration layer as a place to solve problems. And that's what we needed. It was too hard. It was, hey, if I come up with a need for the integration layer, I might get it next quarter, or it might take 2 quarters to implement, because it was a traditional development style. It was you had to do design, you had to figure it all out, you had to have a test phase. And so it was not the place that people went to solve problems, which was the worst part.
Right. And, we've talked about before in terms of the developers that you had to hire and had to, keep on staff and kind of their skill set. Could you kind of give us a little bit of overview of that? Because I know that was a real challenge for you guys.
Yeah. So we had a small team of developers at the time, and we sent 2 of them off for MuleSoft training, and it takes a long time. And because we didn't have demand to implement MuleSoft changes or new integrations every week or every month, the training would either go stale, or that investment was too much for us to bear with our small team. And so it was hard to make sure we had coverage across a development team of 5 or 6 people, because the investment to train them all was significant.
Right. And if I remember correctly, another challenge was that they could only be integration engineers, right? Yeah. They were trained specifically in MuleSoft, and that was it. Was that correct?
Yes. Yeah. That tends to be a career choice that they make. And so we found that it was difficult to have somebody come in and say, you're going to take care of MuleSoft along with the 4 other responsibilities that you have in your role. Their training and knowledge would go stale, or it wasn't a career choice that they wanted to make.
And what impact was that for having in the organization when you didn't need, right? you don't need integrations built every day, right?
Right.
So when you don't need those integrations built, what were those engineers then doing?
They were supporting the other tool sets that we had in our integration layer. They were managing the AWS Lambda integrations. They were solving for other technical problems because it was our technical team. So if there was, we have a couple custom applications. If we needed help in that code, so they were spreading their knowledge and skill set across multiple different technology layers. And it wasn't a great solution for them. I think the other thing I would mention is we're a worldwide company. We're up to about 1,500 people. The integrations that ran, if they ever had an issue or ever had a failure, we had to support 24/5 at a minimum. And so you couldn't have your two technical people that sit next to each other in the same time zone be the only ones that know how the system works. So that spread across a small team also made it challenging.
Got it. And if we think about kind of, you said that the view in the organization was that integrations kind of went, problems went when there were integrations, they sort of died, right? They were seen sort of as a graveyard versus, problems getting solved. How did that impact the IT organization? Kind of what was the view then of the IT organization from the outside?
Yes. Well, that we're not here to solve problems, which you don't want that to be for your IT organization. But it generates shadow IT. You get teams that just try to solve for themselves because they don't want to wait. It creates a relationship with your business partner that you don't want because they don't feel like you can solve their problems for them in a quick and efficient way.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we want to kind of shift to, right, you've identified that you've got to make the change, right? That you've got MuleSoft as your primary kind of integration layer, along with a few others, and you've got these competing solutions, and it's sort of inhibiting IT from being a true business partner, right? What was kind of your process in terms of, okay, we know we need to make a change. What is our approach? How do we come up with a new approach to solving a lot of these integration and automation challenges?
Yeah. So the first two big variables that we put in front of us that seem really obvious in hindsight. One is I didn't want to write custom code anymore. Given the size of our team, at the time we had a development team of 6 worldwide. I didn't want to be creating deep custom code bases that I had to maintain and keep alive. And that's actually how I perceived integrations that we built at MuleSoft, because it was hard. And so I knew that to be the case. I also knew that I needed something more cost effective than MuleSoft was for us. We were running with, if memory serves, a single core. That was the smallest level that you could run on the MuleSoft platform, and it is a significant impact to our cost envelope. And I knew I wanted a solution that my team could ramp up on quickly, and that was leverageable across the landscape. So the idea of connectors, for example, was very compelling for us, because if we have mechanisms to connect to all of these applications in our landscape, that's a huge leap forward. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but we're almost entirely SaaS based. So we have very little on-prem with the exception of our BI layer. We need to make connections and leverage those connections for all future integrations. So there were a number of variables that we knew we wanted to attack when we started looking for solutions.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's transition to your move to a new development approach. So you make the strategic decision to retire MuleSoft. And then you have decided that you want a modern-based approach. kind of talk me through kind of what were the hurdles you went through? Like, what were the core challenges in that transition and development?
Yeah. One of the first things we did was we asked a couple of the developers on our team to get into Tray and get into, other workflow choices to get oriented around, hey, this is a different way to build things. Can you go hop in, do some proof of concept work and understand what this means to your workflow and how you deliver solutions? And so we spent a couple weeks having the team do that. At the same time, we had another team in Zuora that was talking with Tray already. And so I was able to leverage those conversations to understand more about what Tray could do for us. And the planets aligned around, hey, we can actually prototype and understand and iterate on solutions here in a much quicker way. And the team actually really liked working in the environment. And so we headed down this path of, could this actually really work for us? And that was the beginning that took us to the journey of investing in Tray. Well, I'll pause there and let you think about that and ask more questions.
Yeah. So I know that there was, the initial feedback from the team, because you're fundamentally shifting the way they think about building applications, the way they think about building integrations. So what was the feedback from the team? Because it's obviously, as I said, a monumental shift in your approach.
Yes. For people who you learn about your development team when you make a transition like this. For those that, and in my journey, I've met many different kinds of developers, and for those that want to write code, this is not their path. This is not their journey, and that's okay. And so we had some people that said, I still want to be in the code, and they made different choices for their career journey, and that's great. For those of the team that stuck with it and really learned, now it's become a tool in their tool belt. And I had just heard, I think I mentioned this to you, Michael, I just heard that our team in Chennai is starting to do brown bags with the other folks there, because they're hearing that they're working on this thing called Tray.
That's
and
right.
They want to know more about it and how do they leverage it. And so for those that were ready to make the move to a different way to build things, it's proven to be quite advantageous.
Great. And so in terms of, you talked about MuleSoft in kind of the costs that they were impacting on the business. Were there any other costs that you saw that you were able to extract from the business by being able to move onto this modern based approach?
From a pure write a check perspective, the cost of the software definitely was an advantage, but now we find value in shorter time cycles. And we find value in things that are a little bit harder to quantify, but still bring us value. So when you ask about cost, it could be quantified or qualified, right? So I would say we're saving time. We're starting to change the narrative with our business partner, because we can have a conversation with about their need. And in 7 to 10 days, we can show them something that is close to what they already need, and they're surprised. And that's a savings to me, because now I can turn things around much faster. It brings more work, but I think of it as a savings.
Right. And we discussed earlier about the view of IT within the organization, right? As a place where problems go to die, or integrations go to die, right?
Yep.
How is that this move to the workflow based approach? How has that changed the dynamic between yourselves and other business partners within the organization and the teams?
Yeah, so I'll use a really simple example. Towards the end of our conversation, we were going to talk about some of the use cases that we have coming for us. But if I use the very first use case that we implemented, it was, wow, how do these connectors work? How do these workflows work? And we implemented a simple connector into Salesforce that watched for when the sales team won an opportunity. And then we used Tray to let everybody know in a Slack channel so everybody could celebrate that win. It's a super simple use case, but it did a couple things for us. It was our first implementation of what we would call a production Tray use case that did something that we would have never considered to be in MuleSoft. But after we did that, the exposure has now generated additional requests. So now we've done an iteration on that, and we're communicating with a group of salespeople about when we lose an opportunity. And it's becoming that sales team looks at us now as, oh, they can actually deliver on requests in a week or two. And especially when we iterate, it goes really fast. And so they're starting to leverage us as a mechanism for solving their problems, which is our fundamental goal in the first place. And so it's great. It's great to see that behavior starting to change.
Yeah, and I'm sure for a morale perspective, right? It's a lot more inviting and kind of exciting for you guys to be sort of a center of excellence versus kind of like, oh, I guess I'll go to IT, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's there are a number of really interesting scenarios that we're starting to consider with Tray.
Yeah, so we'll just take the pause there. We'll dive into them in a second.
Yeah.
So, you talked before about the rapid iterative development process. So could you kind of give some context to, you said you were doing a lot of prototyping on ideas.
Yes.
And then sort of were all those ideas come to fruition, or kind of how was that working?
Yeah, not every idea do we end up implementing.
Right.
Some ideas are, hey, can we connect to this source and use it in the way that we're thinking about trying to use it? And sometimes the way we're thinking about it doesn't work out, but that's okay, because the team learns something by doing that. And it's usually only a couple-day investment to see what the art of the possible even is for what we're thinking about. And so we've now completely implemented this iterative process with the team. If we have an idea, we ask the team, come back in a week and tell us if this particular idea has merit and how it would work, and they come back and tell us. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it feels like you're making progress every time because you're learning about what the platform can and cannot do, and you're connecting that to the need that you have.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously the title of this whole webinar is moving from 3 months to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
How is that? Obviously you're able to build integrations faster, and that's super important. But how has that impacted kind of your ability to deliver software for the business, right? How has that impacted kind of the end goal of serving your customers and driving the business forward?
Yeah, so it improves the relationship. You can show them things much quicker. You can have engaging conversations with them about what they need the solution to be. But it also compartmentalizes and changes how you deliver the change. So when we were doing change in MuleSoft, it was this large monolithic delivery of this application to that application with a bunch of logic and data in it. Now I can iterate on, all right, let's move the first 3 compartments from A to B. Let's add to it. Let's transform it. Let's build on top of what we've already got. And so it makes for a more engaging conversation that takes us on a journey rather than a specific deliverable that we'll get to you next quarter. And so it changes your whole narrative. And the other thing I'll comment, and Michael, we didn't talk about this, but I'll mention it. It actually has emphasized that we do need to spend some time thinking about enterprise architecture with the implementation of this tool. We have to make sure that we're not creating too many use cases that just make too many connections around our landscape. And so we've now started to implement conversations and architectural reviews before we go live with any of our Tray solutions, just to make sure that we're not violating any of the principles that we have for the architecture. And 3 years ago when I got here, we weren't doing that as robustly as we could have been either. And so that's something that we're doing now as well.
Okay, great. And if we remember when we were just speaking about having developer teams that were focused solely on integrations and building building for MuleSoft only, and the restrictions that give you there, kind of how has that transition went, and kind of how has that impacted your overall developer teams?
So I think of Tray now as a tool in their toolkit that they're able to ramp up on and understand in a relatively short period of time. And so as they're progressing through the landscape, helping us integrate systems or helping us, bring up a new SaaS solution for us, Tray is a tool they can use, and they'll identify that they need to use it when needed. And so it doesn't mean I have to have 100% Tray dedication in any resource. It means that anybody on the development team can pop into Tray if we're having a problem, see what's going on, or use it as a tool. So it changes how I resource the team. It changes how I think about them working on solutions. So it's much more flexible for me as a team leader, for sure.
And I understand the orientation of the developer. Has it allowed you to, obviously 3 months to 3 weeks is a huge difference in time scale. Has it reduced the amount of development time that you have had to really dedicate to integrations?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think if you measured it with one integration, yes, it's shorter. I think we're doing more integration work now because we can.
I see.
Right? We're solving problems here now that we would not have considered solving problems with here before. And so the integration work, depending on how you measure, you could make the argument that it's gone up, but it's gone up in a good way because we have this tool to solve problems.
Yeah, you're bolstering your output versus just kind of hitting your head off the same problem for 3 months, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's better. It's okay to have that kind of new work.
Sure, that makes sense. So with that kind of the results you went, we can just kind of summarize these. You went from your 3 months to 3 weeks. The cost savings we already spoke about. The developer output, right? That kind of we've already talked about being able to bolster your output and improve the development time. Is there any other results that you could think of that maybe we haven't covered here that the audience would want to know?
I can't emphasize enough how valuable it's been for us as an IT organization, to improve our relationship with our business partners. And that's something that's not necessarily here on the slide, but it changes the narrative. It allows us to respond in a quicker way that we just couldn't before. And so, yes, all of these results are true. We're delivering more. We're going faster. We've saved some dollars, but it's really solving those problems for our partners. Is that cannot emphasize how valuable that is to us.
That makes sense. So now with all of this said, right, we're very excited that you guys are, moving to the next stage and the next level. And I would love if you could kind of give us some examples on, let's start with some of the use cases, right? You already spoke to a few of them that you've been able to implement with Tray, and then looking to the future, kind of what are your plans to expand out the usage and the value that it's bringing?
Yeah. There's a number of uses. So I'll talk about some significant current use cases. I already talked about the Salesforce one. We also had a legacy integration that was loading travel expenses from Concur back into Salesforce, and that was running in AWS with Lambda code. It was brittle. It was inconsistent. It was implemented in a way that failures were sending emails to unmonitored mailboxes kind of thing. And we re-implemented that solution in Tray in a way that we understand what's happening, the error handling is proper, the daily run is infinitely more reliable now. And so our global services team, for example, that's got to get billing expenses back into Salesforce, it's something they actually can rely on now, rather than 3 years ago, they were opening tickets every week that they don't see expenses showing up. And we didn't know why. And so just a huge improvement in our Concur to Salesforce platform, for example. We also have a significant amount of work going into, and we've just started this journey, but it's significant work around Workday and doing people feeds to systems that need hierarchy data and information about our employees. So one of the more recent examples is it's how we're feeding Jira Service Management, for example. So you've got approvals for tickets following the right scheme. All of that is now being run with Tray, in addition to a number of other smaller examples that are running. But those are the recent significant ones, and none of them took us more than a month to get implemented. And so, yeah, that list is continuing to grow, and that's a couple examples for use cases.
Great. Thanks. So I think we're at the Q&A stage, and we have a lot of questions here.
There's questions coming. Okay, cool. Good.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions coming. So I have a question here. How exactly it helps to reduce the time? Let's say if we have a MuleSoft batch flow getting the daily data from Oracle and upserting in Salesforce by applying some transformation, how did you reduce the time comparison to MuleSoft? So I guess maybe if we just answer that generally.
Yeah. So anytime, so if you think of so if I go backwards, anytime that we're interacting with Salesforce, we've created one service account-based connector that anybody on the Tray platform with the appropriate credentials can leverage as that connector. So you don't have to build something new. You leverage the connector. It's got the data design already exposed in the connector. And so the team is able to go in and build the workflow for that logic for the daily run. It literally takes the team a couple days, and then validation just takes a couple days. In the old environment, it took our team a long time to formulate that MuleSoft path. And it would take, by the time we walked through the design and we talked about what it took to implement to do it the right way, we'd be 4 or 5 weeks in. And then you'd have to test. And so in Tray, usually our test validation is a day or two at the end. And so our cycle ends up being, less than 10 days, we can have something running.
Got it. Okay, great. Thanks for that. And so another question here. Hey, Mark, I love a lot of what you're saying, especially around improving integration team optics. You mentioned the continued need to maintain Zuora's internal architecture practices. I'm curious if or how you handle architecture audits in Tray.
Architectural audits.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting conversation. We have an enterprise architecture team that has actually the new leader hasn't started yet. And one of the gaps that we had when I came here 3 years ago was the architectural view of how everything was put together was not very robust. It didn't understand the data set at all. And from an application integration perspective, it only understood about half of the integrations that were actually in place. So we've done a lot of work around just getting our arms, just step back from Tray for a moment, getting our arms around what is our landscape doing such that when we start talking about audits, we actually understand what we're trying to do. And so I'll admit to you, we have not done Tray specific architectural audits. The way we're thinking about it is the integrations that are implemented are just integrations on the list along with some of our legacy ones that still exist. And that becomes of the data and architectural audit that the EA team is going to tackle. And so this is part of our journey that's new. And so we're not thinking about it Tray specific. We're thinking about it architecturally.
Got it. So we have a question here. If an integration needs to apply transformations on the source code, on the source data, how a non-developer business user will apply using Tray, as those users don't have much dev exposure. So I guess the broader question is there, how have you found non-developers using Tray for source data?
This one brings up the conversation, Michael, that the Tray team and I were having about giving access to Tray to other parts of the organization to leverage the no-code components, right? And so when I think about people that don't necessarily understand the data, if we're in a scenario where it is a complicated enough transformation, we have access to some analysts on our team within the IT organization. If the data transformation or the understanding of what's happening in the data is getting complex, sometimes I will ask for, we refer to them as business system analysts, BSAs. I would ask for a BSA to be part of the conversation to help navigate that journey, to make sure that we're not deviating or negatively affecting our data sets. And so I would bring that in. But it's a good question, because sometimes our user community sees and they think they know what's happening, but the data underneath is not that's not actually how it's implemented.
Great. And one other question here is about the difficult to migrate to Tray. So I think this is a good question here. Was there any limitations or any difficulties in migration, any hangover, right? Hangover applications that are still running from MuleSoft that were a difficult transition over to Tray?
Yeah. So technology-wise, I don't think I could say we had any hangovers, technology gaps, things we couldn't solve for by moving to Tray. Mm-hmm. I think the hardest part about making the move was understanding the intent of the integration with the business team and working through, okay, we see it moving data. Let's have a conversation about intent and about the business process that's running around this thing to make sure we support it properly, getting through that conversation. So when we re-implement it in Tray, it makes sense. That's the hardest part.
Got it. And was there any connectors that weren't available that you had to kind of work around in order to do any migrations?
Oh, you mean like if we had to use a universal connector or something?
Yeah.
I don't think I have one in my head, Michael. Okay. I don't think I can say that. I do know in one of our future use cases, one of the things that we're talking about doing is we use Vimeo for our video platform, and one of the ideas that we have is we want to use Tray to be able to get into the Vimeo repositories and actually search for particular topics that we've recorded in our video landscape. I think we've discovered that connecting into Vimeo is going to require some universal connector components, but we haven't implemented that yet. That's the only one I can think of. But what we've implemented into production has not been a challenge. Like, we have not experienced a gap there.
Got it. And I suppose the one of the questions that I have, what is your kind of long-term view of adopting AI within your organization and kind of infusing AI within Tray?
Yeah. So we have a CIO who started about 9 months ago, and he is very connected to the AI community. So we're being careful.
Right.
The one thing that Karthik, our CIO, really wants us to think about is providing an AI experience to our employee community that is consistent. And so we don't necessarily want, Einstein and Salesforce doing AI just for Salesforce, and then the Okta AI just doing AI if you're trying to do something in Okta. We don't want employees to find their way based on what they need. We want a seamless AI experience that an employee can go to, and then behind the scenes, we actually get that request to the right location. We're exploring Tray as a mechanism for providing that connection point, and then using Tray to figure out, hey, where should this request go in our landscape? So it's almost like the front layer that establishes consistency. Now within the workflow, how do we make choices for where to actually parse and send that request across our landscape? So our community gets a unified AI experience. And so we're exploring that now. We actually just started those conversations in the last 10 days.
That's awesome. That's super exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Super exciting. So looking at it from holistically, when you're looking to migrate across, and what have been the biggest challenges in this migration journey?
There have been a couple. One is when when we implemented Tray and we did our first implementation, we were still in a place where we understood, or we could see what Tray could do, but we actually had a hard time convincing all of those around us that we had this tool that we could make a difference with. Mm-hmm. And so it took time for us to get the people around us understanding how to use the tool, and that it's something that we could actually do that would help them. And so that took time, and we're still working on that. The people that we've done work for across our business organizations are very appreciative, but I don't think we've done enough for our company to understand what Tray can do for us. And so we still have work to do there. Mm-hmm. Technically, I have virtually no significant issue with the way we've implemented Tray. It's great. It's true. I don't have significant technical gaps that I need filled from a Tray perspective. It's really about the change management of it all.
Great. Well, I think we'll leave it there, Mark. Thank you so much for your time today and for all of the great insights. We really appreciate it from everyone here at Tray. Thank you to our audience for being able to join us again today. We hope you got a lot of value out of this. This will be on demand, so it will be emailed out to you. Thank you once again, and hope you have a great rest of your day or evening.
Hey, Michael, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Thank you, Mark. Bye.
Bye.
I agree. That was such a great time, a lot of fun, and lots of great insight. I really appreciate, especially at the end there, bringing in that sort of human element, the idea of training being a part of this. Our tools are so important, and having the right tools is so important, and also incorporating in our teams and making sure that our teams are prepared and ready to utilize these tools. And I thought that was really interesting that Mark acknowledged that at the end, among many other really interesting insights and cool takeaways. As I said at the top here, I love getting into these real world examples and getting to see things in action and how things have worked and played out in real time, in real life. So I'm really glad that we all got to sit in and kind of join in that conversation with Mark and Michael today. On that note, I want to thank everyone who's been asking some great questions. Now, I know that we didn't get to all the questions today. The team is working furiously to get answers back to everybody on live chat. But if you still have a question, there is still time to get that in. And if we can't get you a response back on live chat, then we will get your responses back over email. So make sure you're not sitting on those questions. Get those questions into Tray.ai, and they will get responses back to you over email. Now, if you're looking for a little bit more information right away, you can also visit the handouts tab. If you remember at the start of this, I said that you were going to take in a lot of information, and there was going to be a lot of cool stuff that you would want to dig back into and explore after we wrap. Well, now is the time. So you can book a demo You can get that free trial going. You can start a really cool kind of self-led interactive tour. So those 3 are great ways to make sure that you're getting in the sandbox. If you're that hands-on learner, the demo, the tour, and the trial are a great place to start. You can also explore the Tray.ai, or excuse me, Tray.ai website and spend a little time with that, getting to know some of their resources and then making sure that you really fully understand that wonderful platform. And there's also a really cool guide, 3 signs it's time to embrace AI and modernize traditional iPads. So make sure that you've got that. Make sure you get that guide. Make sure you've spent some time exploring the website, take that tour, book that trial, book that demo. You've got all kinds of cool ways to follow up on this webinar. If you're still asking those questions, again, you will get responses back. So keep those questions rolling. While you're doing all of that, I am going to give away a prize. We have a $250 Amazon gift card going to someone who is here live and present at the webinar. Before I do that, I do want to say, Chris, I see your shout out. I love that. I agree. Very informative conversation. Thank you for that, Chris. 100% seconded. All right. We have a prize, a $250 Amazon gift card going to Rob Elkin from Massachusetts. Rob Elkin of Massachusetts. Congratulations to you, Rob. Now we will get in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap up our webinar. So stay tuned for that. All right, well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank Tray.ai and their guest Zuora for making this webinar possible. And especially to our wonderful speakers here with us today, Michael and Mark. Michael, especially also for doubling up, getting some live chat answers out. You're clearly a rock star today, and you have both given us so much to think about. Lots of cool takeaways. On that note, my biggest high five, my biggest thank you, as always, is going to all of you out there in the audience for joining us today, for taking time out of your day. We know how busy, boy, this time of year is just wild, isn't it? I saw a few of you joining saying you were running right in between meetings, one thing to another. And I know how hard it can be to pull out of that meeting schedule and take some time to step back, to learn, to communicate, to join in these collaborative learning sessions. And they are so important. They are how we stay ahead in this very rapidly changing world. So I really do mean it when I say high fives to all of you for taking that time, for giving that space in your day to participate in this discussion today. Very much appreciate all of you. I hope that you've learned a little bit and you're walking away feeling kind of lit up and excited to keep the conversation rolling. I hope that I get to see all of you at a webinar again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks all.